I'm Alex back from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Wreck from Nia Night Games. Wreck is a 2 to 4 player game set in the world of Wroth. It is a standalone but also compatible game in the Wroth universe, which is by Nia Night Games, and Nia Night is like a sub-brand under Chip Theory Games. Also, before we dive into this is a prototype. All rules and components have to change. I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below, and also this channel is sponsored by Allplay. More about them at the end of the video. And when I say this is a prototype, I mean this is a prototype. There's a bunch of things. I have a whole note of like all the things that are already changing. Some of the color choreography, color matching on the various dice. These boats over here, which are essential new mechanism in Wreck over here, they're going to be changed over here. There's a small typo over here. 29 is supposed to be 30. Small things like that. But I'm really emphasizing, while I always say this is a prototype, rules, components have to change. When it is a prototype, I say that. In this case, they already are aware of a bunch of small things and will be changing them. But the general gameplay is going to be the same, although also powers, abilities, and all that stuff, that's all subject to change. But with that said, let's go ahead and talk about Wroth and what Wreck does differently. I've already covered Wroth on the channel, so you can go ahead and watch my full review on that if you're interested. But as a general recap, how do I want to do this? This is mostly similar to Wroth with some things that make it different. So let's do a general concepts over here. Wroth and Wreck are both very similar games that are going to be area control puzzles that resolve once a player hits 30 points. In that, you're going to finish off the round. Whoever has the most points in that round is going to win the game. You're going to be getting points through a few things. You could get points through abilities in different ways. You're going to get points from area control. That's going to be the biggest thing you're going to be getting points from, because you're constantly trying to control the various regions that have these point tokens in them, both land and sea regions. Sea regions are new to Wreck over here. And then whoever has area control over those regions will be getting points, as well as the abilities those regions offer. You're going to continuously do that round over round, whoever has the most control in these regions, trying to figure out who can get their way towards 30 points faster than the other players. That's basically the core concept. But the game is going to have players drafting dice, as well as using powers and abilities. That's where the game is going to stand out. And again, outside the sea region so far, all of this really applies to Wreck and Wroth. But you're going to basically be rolling the dice over here, a variable number depending on the player count, and then players are going to be drafting those dice. So you can go ahead and take these dice over here in order to try to figure out, do you want to be killing various units? Do you want to be deploying various units to your other units on the board? Do you want to go ahead and gathering some core over here, which is going to be a limited resource you're going to be utilizing to go ahead and recruit your elite units? You're going to be drafting these dice to move around the board, deploy, and attack other units, all in an effort to ultimately have area control over the battlefield. That's the general idea. So in a 2-player game, you'd be drafting 3 dice each. In a 3 or 4-player game, you draft 2 dice each with 1 die remaining. So you go ahead and choose a die. They choose a die. They choose a die over here. They choose a die. They have bounced over there. They choose a die. Back and forth. You choose your dice, and then 1 dice is remaining. And the person who has the fewest, I didn't put my little markers over here from these factions. Whoever has the fewest points is going to get the remaining die. If there's a tie, no one gets that die. These dice are going to determine your actions as you try to get your units out onto board into the various regions. And again, this is where Wreck is going to differ from Wroth a bit, because you have these boats. Generally, movement in the game would have you moving across these connected land regions. You have a bunch of these units over here, and you can go ahead and move them from region to region. Go ahead and move and get some area control there as you try to figure out how to move area control-wise, having more units than your other units, or alternatively, killing other units in order to have more points that way. So it has both combat and area control. But in this particular board, we have a singular map over here. I believe, I could be wrong on this, I believe this is going to be a double-sided map with 2 maps, but my prototype has the one board over here. So you're going to be moving around these islands connected as such, but you also, in Wreck specifically, you'll be moving into boats. So over here you have these ships over here that can contain basic units. You can control up to 4 units that will fit into the ships, and again, these will be changing, but you also can put up to 2 of your elite units into ships. So when you recruit your elite units, you can also move them into ships where they can then go ahead and move around the board to various connected sea points in order to spread more efficiently and quicker onto the table. Also, ships will fire each other. That's another thing. You're going to be rolling cannon dice. Your elite units, if you had a combat over here, for example, you'd have be rolling 1 regular die and 1 elite die, because you're going to have your elite unit and then roll them and add up your various attacking results. Again, these will be changing to different visuals over here in order to figure out how much damage you deal. You can deal that damage to other ships. You can actually fight other ships. You can pass by other ships, which will trigger a potential broadside as the players attack each other, or not, while also fighting and shooting onto land or having land shoot onto the ships. But then the biggest thing is this provides a lot of movement flexibility. These ships are not just going to provide area control to the various regions on the board, but it'll also allow you to go ahead and cash your dice in. These dice now have 2 meanings, because you have a regular dice draft and then a ship dice draft. So everything you do has another way that you can utilize that. But in the case of movement, for example, you can move up to 3, 1, 2, 3, and then embark onto a various land region, which gives you a lot of movement flexibility ability, which is why controlling the seas is so important. But also controlling the seas means having people on those ships in order to provide a threat against the other players, and you always have to figure out what is the best use of your time and people at any given point in the game. That's the general arc. Draft dice, use those dice for actions. Those dice can engage in battle, kill, move, recruit, all of that, and gain core, which you'll need for your various elite units. Which brings us to the powers and abilities parts of things, which is a perfect segue to the various new factions. Because again, I'm kind of combining my coverage of Wreck and Wroth, a little bit of a recap as I go into this. But Wreck, in addition to adding the sea zones over here, in addition to adding these boats and the way those are going to interact, and the way you're going to have elite cannon dice and regular cannon dice, and be able to use all the dice you draft for 2 different sets of actions, it also adds 4 new factions. We're going to have over here these 2 factions over here, the Wroth over here, and then the Murin. I never actually read them, I just know that they exist. But we also have 2 more over here. We have the Scurv, and then we also have the Ramakai, which I believe is going to be introduced in an expansion. This I believe will be changed, will not be part of the core set, so just taking that into account. So we have 4 new factions being added, plus whatever expansion content they have, and each one is going to have their own unique set of elite units, which will provide game-breaking abilities, which are very fun. In general, by the way, Wroth in general, the half the fun of the game, that's not true, more than that, 72% of the fun of the game is in the interactions between all the powers and abilities of the various factions and their elite units, and the game-breaking way that each one feels, well, game-breaking. And that's no exception over here. We have several new factions. I'm not going to be going over everything, but just to give you a general idea, we have over here, my favorite thing about these, you'll notice that these units feel a bit different, almost as if they're designed to hold something, because these guys, they have possession as their ability, which they can move into zones over here, and then take control of literally other units, a kill and a possession all at once. You have that, which is going to be one of their abilities, and then again, various ways they interact over here. For example, the ghouls over here can possess basic troops by lowering the vitality, so they really lean into that possession aspect over here. We have these guys who have one of my favorite elements over here because of the way it interacts with the game. Seasight is doing scoring for each region tied for control that they occupy. You gain 2 points. Now, to be very clear, you might have heard me say one thing even though I didn't say it. Not that they are tied for control, if that region is tied for control. So if other players, if you have 5 units and 5 units and they have 1 unit, they will get 2 points for being present in a tied region, which introduces a whole nother fun little element of picking off the leader to try to balance out regions just so you can get those residual points. If you've ever played Las Vegas, like the dice game, this kind of has a little bit elements of that with the control of you being able to kill other units. We have over here, we have the Ramakai. These guys are going to have like elusive, they're just harder to kill in general, as well as the totems provide kind of a blocker from other people moving into your regions. Again, both of those are very solid abilities, although it is interesting, which we'll come back to in thoughts and opinions, but like if you paired up a 2-player game, or even more than a 2-player game, but like the Ramakai against the Wroth over here, possession kind of overrides elusive, at least, I mean, again, this is the problem. One of the problems with Wroth and Wreck is going to be all the interactions and the questions that resolve from those. I believe possession would just kind of avoid killing units, but you know, maybe I'm wrong over there. And then we have the Scurv over here, kind of a captain approach over here, and genuinely, like the captain is going to be able to use this. When you use a kill action, you're going to be able to re-roll that die and take that action, which is another fun little element that you get out of that, just getting bonus. That's the wrong die. That was my extra die over here. You'll be able to re-roll that die and take another action of that, which again can just kind of double up their abilities, plus of course the other abilities that they have. 4 new factions, each bringing their flavor to it, although again, reminder that one of those might be an expansion faction, not part of the core set. Check the campaign page, it'll have all the stuff. But that's basically going to introduce new elements, which again are interchangeable between your game of Wroth and Wreck, because it's standalone and expandable. So whatever content you have for all the various characters, factions, abilities, all of that's going to be added to the gameplay experience you have. Which is a good time to finally move into thoughts and opinions, like, don't like, and see what's not liking, and this will cover some of the same ground as Wroth. Like, I structure this as a review for Wreck. It will have a lot of the same elements and thoughts that I have about Wroth, but then I'll cover some of the new things as well. Overall, Wroth, as far as what I like, let's cover what I like about the game. Wroth and Wreck are fast-paced area control games that play in like 50 to 60 minutes, giving you a very quick game which ramps up quickly to 30 points as players quickly spread their units out onto the board in order to try to get as many points as possible, but mainly while utilizing their unique faction and being mindful of the other factions at the table and all the threat that those factions bring to the table. Everyone has like, and it's very manageable because you only have those 3 abilities per faction, and that's a very manageable amount of, okay, great, I know what you do, I know what you do. Even if you're playing this game for the very first time, that's 12 abilities you need to be mindful of. That is not an overwhelming amount, although you definitely do benefit from having played against or as that faction faction before, you will pick up a bit more, and the intuitiveness of, oh, if you're playing that guy, I have to be mindful of there. If you're playing as the Scurv over there, I need to draft more of these dice over here because those are really helpful to you. So even if it's not what I want, for you, it's twice as good. So I need to be mindful of taking those things from you while obviously not compromising my own position. Well, if it's a 2-player game, it's kind of direct, but, you know, if you're playing a 3 or 4-player game, I can't give up my own goals in order to take something from you. So you're balancing all those abilities, and you're doing so in a game that plays in 50 to 60 minutes, that is kind of sheer chaos, but with enough strategic depth and control that it's both sheer chaos, because your plans are going to go, haywire the entire time you play, but also it's fast-paced. It's not about holding down the fort, it's about getting out there and getting as many points as possible while other players constantly try to get in your way and remove those points from you. So you're gonna, I didn't really talk about, these are rules, so I'm just remembering I didn't mention some things like the concept of being alone in a region, getting extra points from that. There's all these things to be mindful of. But basically, it's fast-paced area control with dice drafting. The dice drafting is fun as well. Having a pool of dice on the table and being mindful of what you want and what's going to be left on the table for others. That's a huge part of the gameplay experience. And again, it matters which factions you're playing against as well. The sheer amount of decision space that you get out of a game that's going to be 50 to 60 minutes and giving you a lot of direct interaction, spreading your units out, a little bit of murder time. Not as much murder time, it's more about the spreading units out, but there definitely is some murder, and depending on which faction you're playing, some possession time. There's a lot of fun abilities that you're going to be utilizing, and the new factions are, this is where we get to the new stuff to a degree. The 4 new factions that I've had over here are all very solid as far as the coolness factor that they all bring to the table. Different things that they do. I think that, like, again, like, even the Ramakai, like, they're not necessarily as cool as, like, possessing things or the subtleness of getting extra points from Seasight. That's very cool. But the idea of kind of locking down things that you're harder to kill and you can't even move into my region, that's a lot of control the game gives you. Everyone brings their flavor as far as how offensive, defensive, control-based they are, and they're all fun to interact against each other's, and this introduced just 4 new factions. The sea elements over here, the boats that they add, those I have pros and cons, but on the pro side, moving around the board is a ton of flexibility to be able to get to different places. The combat aspect, I don't love having my focus split between the things I want to do. That's one of the downsides of the boats. But on the plus side, unleashing a barrage of cannon fire against the enemies, again, incredibly satisfying. Loading up a ship with some elites, you do lose your powers when you're on a boat, but you do get the elite dice instead, which is a nice trade-off. But being able to unleash a barrage of cannon fire against your opponents, whether on land or on other ships, is again tremendously satisfying. So that aspect is all on the pro side. Which brings us to the con side. One of the things I don't like about the game, and again, this is both Wroth in general, and then the specifics of Rec. First of all, following other player abilities, despite everything I said about how accessible it still is a little bit. Meaning, if you're playing against new factions for the first time, you will know yours very well. You will still benefit from having played against those before, or playing as them. While it's only 12 abilities to keep track of, in a game that's this fast, if you only kind of figure out all the ways that person can get one under you, or get one past you, you're going to be a quarter of the way in the game before you kind of nailed it down, and at that point you may have suffered losses that are harder to recover from. Getting behind the components has always been a problem for me with Wroth and Rec over here. That's probably one of my biggest challenges with this game. I've never liked the kind of combination of elite dice for your units over here. I said grab the regular dice. I've never liked the combination of your elite dice for your units and then these little guys. I almost wish it were almost all cubes, or alternatively that they track the elite dice differently. Like, I didn't really talk about it, but elite dice kind of have pips on them, and you count them down as you lower their health, and that lowers their health over there. But I've never felt the immersion of like miniatures on the table, and I don't need this to be miniatures, but I almost wish it was either just miniatures or just cubes. The weird hybrid of semi-miniatures but not really miniatures, but also dice over here. I've never gotten, like, I love the art of Wroth and Rec. I like the other components of Wroth and Rec. The specific combination of troops on the board is a weird midway between full abstracted cubes that you might find in like games like El Grande versus actual units you might find in games like Cyclades or Blood Rage or anything like that. It's this weird middle zone that has never worked for me. It feels like a pedantic complaint, and it is, but it is one of those things that has always made Wroth a game that I'm less in a rush to actually pull out on table, even though I do have so much fun when I do because of the actual combinations of abilities. So the components in this series I have never gotten behind, and that's still true even with the expansions. And I feel silly saying it. I feel like this shouldn't matter to me as much as it does, but it has always been a small blocker for me over here. And again, that's Wroth and Rec over here. Running out of units is never a fun feeling in the game. It is something that happens. Like, your units, when they die, they don't really go back to your board unless you have abilities that do that. They go off to the side and they're gone. Your elite dice do return, and when those happen, it doesn't happen all the time, but when you do run out of units, that's not a fun feeling in an otherwise very fast-paced, like, feel-good moments game. Granted, your units sometimes die too, but just that feels less fun than anything else if you just simply don't have units to actually spawn on the board. And then lastly, another more reasonable complaint is in this game, I feel two-player does not give the kind of two players kind of too direct back and forth in a way that some games can pull off. I don't think Wroth and Wreck can pull it off as well. And even three-player has a problem because three-player can devolve into a bit of king-making. You know, two players going, one player going after the other, another player cutting in. It can feel like you have king-making going on in three players. I do find four players is the best player count for Wroth and Wreck, but that means that it kind of, to me, like, I like it at 3. I wouldn't play it at 2. Solo, I've never really played it solo, so I can't comment on that. I know that I believe they're removing solo from the game going forward, so that's something to be mindful of, or at least they're just not putting it in. So your original Wroth game might be the only one that has solo, and 4 players really where this game shines, in my opinion. As far as I can see others not liking, concerns around asymmetry. Like, I kind of even touched upon this over here, but the asymmetry around the factions and the abilities, in addition to this general balance, is one faction better than another, there's also the specific pairing ups of your faction might just not be as good against another. Like, again, like Wroth directly against Ramakai, from my understanding, like, if you're, especially if you're playing a 2-player game against that, that feels like you're losing a huge edge of the Ramakai against the possession of the Wroth. Now, can you still do things? Sure, but concerns around faction imbalance or asymmetry are definitely a potential concern. And the ships as well. The ships, as much as I like the ability to kind of move around the board and get anywhere, the ships are very free as far as how much movement you get out of them, and that can be a small aspect as just feeling like you kind of are never safe with ships in play. It introduces a faster degree of movement to anywhere on the board, where Wroth has always been a game that's a little bit jumping into combat, but I think the ships can almost accelerate that, and that might just make you not feel safe no matter where you are, which could be a feeling you don't love. In any case, as far as final thoughts on Wroth, well, Wreck, I guess, as far as final thoughts on Wreck, the original Wroth I gave a 4 out of 5, and I'm still going to hold true with that on Wreck. This has always been an interesting game for me because of the fact that the gameplay itself is incredibly satisfying. Every single time I play it, the powers and abilities are so much fun to utilize, and the new powers and abilities over here, because again, these are my first time diving into these are fun. I have not played with any of these against Wroth, so I can't speak around the actual interactions, but the idea of having even more flexibility with what is the table, that's incredibly fun. I love all that. To me, the biggest thing that has held back this game for me is always that I find myself less in a rush to initially table it because of component limitations and the ideal player count. For me, this really plays best at 4, which means it's fighting against a lot of other games that I think do play best with 4. If it played better at 3, that would definitely change things, because honestly, I get a lot of 3-player games in. It's my most common player count, and that is definitely handicapped how often this is the table. So those two concerns, personal feelings around components, as well as player count optimization, those are the main things that have held it back for me. But the amount of fun I do have when I table it is why it still gets a 4. Like, I almost debated. My original rating was a 4. Because of the fact that it has the table less, I almost debated pulling it to a 3.5 out of 5. But I have so much fun when I play it, and that's the problem. Because I have so much fun with the actual ability interaction and how much you get done in a short time, it's in that weird space for me, so I'm going to leave it as a 4 out of 5. As far as other game recommendations, definitely check out Six Sojourns if you're looking for another area control game that abstracts a larger experience into a nice hour-long game of incredibly satisfying, taking 9 actions and that's it, while you attempt to get all your area control puzzling done. And also check out Inish. Inish is not usually an hour, but you can have games that take an hour, and usually it comes in at a reliable 90 minutes, topping out at 2 hours, although I did have a very long game of Inish one time. That can happen. The nature of Inish means it's kind of is variable in the game length. And then lastly, I mentioned that Allplay is a channel sponsor. If you go to allplay.com, you can find games both from Allplay as well as their partner publishers. And today's recommendation is going to be Pebbles from Rose Gauntlet Entertainment. If you're looking for another area control game that is a lot more cozy in its vibes, Pebbles is a game you can check out. And if you are getting things on Allplay, you can get any number of things from any of those games there for flat rate shipping, depending where you are. For example, in the US, it's $4 flat rate shipping. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.